Good afternoon. I got a galaxy of speakers here, so I would hardly take maybe a couple of minutes. Just to set that context, today in year 2025, we are about 1.4 billion people in this country. We are self-sufficient as far as basic food is concerned, but if you're looking at things like pulses and oilseeds and others, we are still importing. By 2050, we'll be 1.6 billion people. Unfortunately, we don't have Mr. Trump ruling us, so we can't ask Canada to merge with us. So we will have to manage whatever food we produce within the boundaries of this country. So therefore, I'm very happy that IMC has chosen to give some space to agriculture in the deliberations here today. Now, there are 3 or 4 things which are happening as far as agri and related industries are concerned. One is, of course, the focus is on providing food for everybody. That's number 1. Second, looking at planet and sustainability. Third is how we integrate technology into agriculture so that the farmers get benefits of whatever labor they are putting in. The fourth is the shortfalls at the end of government and how the private sector can come in, both in terms of credits, inputs, whatever else. And at the end of the day, if the technology comes in without displacing people from their livelihoods, how we can ensure that they get more money. If you look at this panel, we have a youngest panelist here sitting next to me. Arjun comes with a very interesting background. He's an Indian, trained in Texas, has a Filipino partner, and is working with farmers. Now, Arjun is working on something very interesting. He works with about 800,000 farmers today. And he's working on 2 or 3 different aspects. One is making technology work for credit, making technology work for ease of business, whether it is know your customers. KYC is a big deal, which even people like me face sometimes, and we find it difficult. And Arjun is ensuring that KYC and related stuffs are made easy for farmers. Third, he has brought a particular app in about 11 languages. What is it called? What Khata? Bharat Khata. Now, Bharat Khata is something which normally a farmer in India is semi-literate. They don't understand how the trader or how the buyer is dealing with themselves. And Arjun has tried to make life easy for farmers. That is very interesting work, Arjun, you are doing. But looking at technology, what is that you see, one, in terms of how you are enabling farmers? That's number 1. And second, when you enable them, what will they be in a position to do going forward? So whether it is credit inputs which you are giving them today, how you are enhancing the incomes. Second, you are speaking about discipline. So what are the issues that today we have, and how do you help them, take over some of those pain points and sort them?
Thank you so much, Arun, for giving that background here as well and applauding the work that we are trying to do. So folks, I'll try to walk you through a little bit of this journey in a slightly more generalist manner, right? Since agriculture is obviously a slightly more specific industry. So I think the problem that we are all wondering and trying to solve for is how do we feed all of us and this very, very large population that we are building here. And as we all understand, the food that is grown here in India, unlike other developed countries like the US, countries in Europe, etc., is grown by smallholder farmers. These smallholder farmers are operating at an average of about 1.5 to 2.2 acres in land holding. That's a very, very, very small scale to operate at, right? Think of a manufacturing unit which has only 5 or 6 people that are working there and has a turnover of less than 5 lakh rupees, right? How does it become sustainable? The biggest raw material for these folks, obviously, are agri inputs, right? But as we all understand here in India, and the reason why we named Bharat Khata, is that everything operates on Bhai Khata, right? And what does that mean? That all of us sitting here also, in some way or the other, are taking informal credit from somebody, right? People in our offices go down to the Kirana store and they buy a good and they take it on credit and tell the fellow that we'll pay you later. Our milkman comes and delivers milk to us every day. But despite having all the liquidity in the world, We tell the milkman to take money from us at the end of the month. Business in India is largely done on credit. Unfortunately, it is done on trade credit, and it is not formalized for formal ecosystems to be able to see these transactions getting recorded, digitized, and then getting formalized for other formal financial services players to come in and finance these transactions. We went in with the goal to say that, hey, there are these large corporates who are operating in rural value chains, people who are selling inputs to finally farmers, or people who are buying goods from eventually farmers. But these corporates today are selling raw materials to their dealers on trade credit. The dealers further are selling those raw materials to the farmers, again, on informal credit. They've been paying back this trade credit or informal credit for generation after generation. But interestingly enough, these dealers or these farmers don't have any sort of credit score or transaction history, which means that they cannot actually go get financing from a formal financial services player, but rather need to constantly avail of the trade credit for the dealer that's given by the corporate, or for the farmer that's given by the dealer. And Arun, as you understand, what this limits the farmer finally to do is that they can only buy raw materials which the dealer is ready to sell them on credit. So we took a step back. We said, why can't we digitize these transactions? We provide account receivables and account payables platforms to large corporates. On both sides, entities who are selling inputs to the farmers, equipment to the farmers, and also entities who are buying back goods or produce from the farmers. They use these AR/AP tools to be able to digitize their dealer or supplier supply chains, to be able to digitize the trade credit that they're offering to these dealers and suppliers, and in lieu of that, give us some sort of digital footprint which we are able to use and connect these dealers and suppliers with bankers and NBFCs on the back end to get them access to formal financial services, which helps them A, decrease their cost, B, increase their overall business value, like you mentioned, and finally also enables them to get disciplined, because it's not trade credit, it's a formal loan that's coming through. Finally, with the use of Bharat Khata, we enable the dealer or the supplier to digitize the informal credit that they are giving to their farmer, and the farmer is able to also, like the dealer, get a transaction history, a footprint of some sort, using which we are being able to provide them financial services with our bankers or NBFCs at the back end. Lastly, we are very, very privileged that last year we were given the opportunity to be able to get an NBFC license by the Reserve Bank of India. And now using that, we are also able to provide these dealers, suppliers, or these farmers with credit products that they need, when they need, and how they need, rather than trying to facilitate the credit products which the banks or NBFCs may have off the shelf. So this is what we've been trying to do, and looking at scaling it over the around India as well as we go forward.
Thank you, Arjun. Very interesting. And coming from somebody who is young and getting into agriculture, it sounds like India has made it. But coming to international perspective, and somebody who is operating in 4 countries, and somebody who is coming to India after 13 years, probably has seen a lot of things changing in India, hopefully. But Dirk, there are 3 or 4 things which I thought you could bring in today to us. One is when you see agriculture, and as I mentioned, or as Arjun mentioned, the land holdings here are very, very small, right? The second thing is, if you're looking at the scale of operations because of those land holdings, they are very, very small. When you compare that with the first world, the Europe or US, there's a huge difference. We cannot mechanize, we cannot put too much of machinery in the country, because otherwise you will displace people. Second is the sustainability angle. We need to sustain people as well as agriculture both. When you see it from a distance, from 5,000 miles away, a country like ours, what do you see? And how do you relate with that? And how do you relate your experiences in those 4 countries with that of India? And tomorrow, if you are to open your 5th office in India, what is that we will need to do?
Thank you for raising these questions. It's been 20 years indeed that I first entered in India, and it's thanks to my friend Mr. Dinesh Joshi to bring me back here and have the opportunity to see India again. One of my first trips, I drove my motorbike actually from the Netherlands to India. It took me 6 weeks, and this time it just took me a few hours in a plane, which is way more efficient. But going from the Netherlands all the way overland to India, it made me realize that the farms are only getting smaller the further I'm getting away from the Netherlands. Now, I'd like to remind you that the Netherlands is a tiny country in Europe, but we are the second or third largest agricultural exporter of the world. And one of the sectors that we're proud of in the Netherlands is the greenhouse industry, where we're producing tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, all in high-tech greenhouses. And we've reached incredible numbers. Just to give you an idea, we're producing 80 to 100 kilograms of tomatoes per square meter per year in a high-tech environment, where you are not able to reach 6 to 10 kilograms in the traditional way of farming here, so a tenfold. And we do so with 10 times less water. That's an industry that has been built over generations. It started after the Second World War, where a lot of smallholders were also the ones providing the food in the Netherlands. And after the Second World War, there was a common drive to never have hunger again. And it was the collaboration between the industries, the financiers, and the business communities, plus the universities, that worked as a triangle to enable this industry to thrive and to innovate and to become one of the leaders in this technology. Now, literally on the way to India, we've come through Ukraine, where we started our first greenhouse that we still own today. And Ukraine, its disposable income is what, maybe $200-300 per month. But we've made a successful business there, producing in a high-tech greenhouse,
for having me here. So most of what I wanted to say has been either said in support of what I want to say or not. So maybe I will just respond in my conversation to what I have heard. So India is about 1.5 billion people, and half of India is reliant on agriculture for their livelihood. So that's about 700 million people connected to the farm sector. So as a smallholder farm, and it's very real what Arjun mentioned, the average area is about 1 to 2 acres per person. And since our company, Godavari Biorefineries, works primarily to bring sugarcane, so we work with at least 20,000 farmers as we deal with them. I think it's very important to work with this community, because my view is corporatization of farming, in terms of employment versus individual farmer, I think at an individual level, it is possible to work with the farmer to dramatically improve their economics on the farm. Now, given that you have 2 acres, of course there will be a limit. But still, according to me, there's a lot you can do. I'll just give examples. How does one improve productivity? And I'll come to that at the end, because I think there is a food and fuel story there. But we talked about, you spoke about monocropping. If you had a large farm, having many thousand farmers, they are each an entrepreneur in their own way. And even if they have a main crop, they will often do either a rotation crop or an intercrop. So for example, we are encouraging farmers to intercrop with legumes. Now, whether that is soya or whether that is yellow pea or that is chickpea, when they work with that, they reduce their farmer fertilizer input. They get a dual income, and often the yield of that, the main crop is enhanced. Intercrops also have very interesting side stories. We often co-innovate with them or co-create with them or co-design with them. Ours is not a story in which we think we tell them something. There is also much to learn from them. And only recently we learned a story of them intercropping with onion. Onion was not a crop that we would have normally thought, but onion brings sulfur to the soil, and that may help sugarcane in its growth. Now we hear about newspaper stories about onion prices going up or onion prices going down. So we found some very interesting farmers who, when the onion price went down, decided not to harvest. And by not harvesting, they in fact increased the sulfur content available for the cane and further improved crop productivity. So that became a story of understanding from our side and then helping disseminate it to others. And so the farmers were very smart. When there was a market opportunity, they harvested and sold. And when the market opportunity was not there, rather than crying about it, they reduced the input cost for the next crop. So that's in terms of having crops. The other thing in what I consider is the food and fuel discussion, which sometimes is more we hear about in what we will say the West. I want to give an example of, in ethanol. We know that the government of India has now achieved, along with the industry and the farmer and the auto companies, a 20% blend in this country. And only yesterday, I think in Assam, it was announced that India is looking at going beyond a 20% blend. That's incredible in 6 years if they went from 2% to 20% and are looking to go beyond. Transition to what I consider from the oil economy to the soil economy. I think Indian productivity in, let's say, most crops, and you talked about the Netherlands as an example, Dirk, and I think that's correct, fantastic productivity. But if you don't have a market for what you produce, then that productivity is not necessarily going to help. Even today in agricultural trade, most of the developed markets are closed to us. So now if I have a much better onion crop, for example, it's not going to go anywhere. We're going to have a reverse. So volatility. And we have to make sure that that volatility goes away and the value is increased. So if I like a farm and fuel, food and fuel crop, food first, of course, fuel next. So what happens is, today, earlier what used to happen, if you had a very productive year and very good crop, if there was no market for it, it would lead to a surplus of that product, no buyers, market would collapse, and what would then happen? You would have a very volatile and amplified either surpluses or deficits. Now what happens is that you have a sink of the energy market. And because you have a sink of the energy market, surpluses go there and the farmer gets regular pricing of the particular product. Now gets an incentive for productivity. Now a farmer, collectively, we can think about increasing yields, say from cane of 30 tons per acre to 40. That increase need not collapse the market. So I think that's where I think there is a great possibility, and only when markets are created, you are exporting to the world. I'm sorry, I'm just saying that, but because there's a market for your product. There is the bulk of the, let's say, the agriculture-based exports are restricted. So that's one other possibility. And I would like to slightly switch gears in looking at, because you spoke about regeneration. So often we look at carbon reserves. We look at carbon reserves, we see what are our gas reserves. We look at what are our oil reserves. You look at what are our coal reserves. And then you go back, you look at our tree reserves, forests. And what we don't see, which is under the surface, is the carbon in the soil. So it's very important that you must work, because ultimately, whether it's food or fuel, then it has to come from the carbon in the soil. So we have to also work with farmers where we look at what we do in the short term to give them good productivity in terms of markets and inputs. Also, what are the inputs we give them to make sure that the soil carbon and other minerals are conserved so that that is available in the long run. So this is how I look at it.
Interesting, Sameer. Let me put one question, related one to you. He also is an educationist. He runs Somaya University. And, right from the time I started in the sector, lab to land is something which is a problem in India. We do a lot of research, but it doesn't get into land. So if you want to combine both this, academia and industry, in 1 minute, how do we propose to do that? How do we go ahead?
So we are doing it in a very in a sustained manner. Already, I think Dirk himself talked about how academia, industry, and farmers came together to improve productivity when you started. I think the same way we are doing, we run an agriculture research station called KIAAR in Karnataka. That is collaborating with Godavari, which is the company we run, and the university, and also universities outside. For example, we work closely also with Michigan State University, along with Somaiya Vidyavihar University. And we are working very closely to look at evidence-based, so firstly, very good diagnosis or analysis of what the soil needs. Good, what I will say, use of IT or geofencing to understand also what the farm is. You overlay the two, you do research to see fertilizer response curves, what would a farm need in terms of a response, and then you overlay them to give the farmer good advice, and through your extension services, try and see those are supported along with, I will say, inputs which are necessary for what the farm needs, not necessarily what a distribution system needs to do. And only then you will be able to create a virtuous cycle. But you need the composition of academia, research, industry, and farmers working together, and policy to make this happen.
That brings to Shiv my question. In terms of, you also had technology in ITC now. So what is the policy change that you are looking for in terms of bringing technology to agriculture and making it more productive?
Yeah, I think a host of agri-tech companies are working in the space. And in order to collectively get and move the needle, as opposed to everybody working in a smaller island, two sets of things possibly will need to happen. One is certain, like the financial sector has transformed the whole banking and payments, that system, very similarly there's an opportunity in terms of how do you create certain digital public infrastructure and digital public goods in case of agriculture as well. You know, over the last many years, it was government who led agriculture and agricultural markets. And therefore, a lot of weather forecasts, the decadal as well as short term, lot of agronomy in terms of science are done under the public bodies and public research system. How do you convert all of this into digital public goods and make it appropriately available for everybody to harness on, along with the basic registry which government is already working on called AgriStack, so that instead of everybody reinventing, it is possible for people to dip into that and work. It's one significant shift that I see makes sense. The second point, which has already been raised, is many of the well-meaning subsidies to support the farmer, the consumer, are distorting what is good behavior from environment perspective and many such angles. And consequently, how do you really use the government support instead of distorting to supporting and building markets for future, of course, in a manner which is friendly for the small farmer and the environment angle. I think these two are the core shifts, I think, which make sense.
Thank you, Shiv. One of the things which we haven't yet covered is physical infrastructure. Giri, I need your views on physical infrastructure for the simple reason that it is said that about 15% of our horticulture crop is lost. If we can possibly avoid those losses, farmers' income automatically will go up to that extent. What do you see happening and what needs to happen? Maybe in a minute and a half, possibly 2 minutes max.
So I think one of the fundamental things which are required especially is finance to begin with, because I think, I used to do commodity trading for a period of time, and you could actually buy spot and sell future and then make money. And the finance actually becomes a crucial input during the harvesting season, because suddenly at that particular point in time, there is no money at all in the rural market. And I think the second thing is that again, for the farmer to have the ability to store and then have the ability to sell properly in lots, You need to have some amount of, I would say, physical infrastructure in the form of warehousing. Third is for perishable. I think last mile connectivity in terms of road going to the villages, I think is a very key. We have exceedingly good connectivity probably between Mumbai and Pune, but if you try to go a little bit deeper inside, of course, Mumbai roads are not that good now. But that is again, I would say, a very big challenge. Fourth, of course, is some kind of a support to make sure that we can actually start to do some amount of value addition at the local village level itself. That how do you convert your tomatoes into a tomato puree and onion paste that you can actually put into a retort machine that extends the shelf life, which actually reduces the volatility. I think that is something which is very absolutely crucial for us to put in place. And fifth, of course, is I would say national agricultural market. Okay, there have been some talks about that. Even today, for instance, we still have to pay a cess to the APMC market in Vashi. I think there is, and I think Shiv also mentioned about certain policies which I think distort these price signals. And I think this is what is important. The final part is that how do you make sure that you have the right kind of technological intervention in terms of identifying that what is the right kind of a soil, what is the right kind of climate, having a priority sector to say, okay, this is what you're probably good at, you know. The Mithila is great in making fox nuts. Okay, haldi grows very well around Nizamabad. Okay, there is Kashmiri red chili in a particular district out of Kashmir, or the Baidagi chilies. So how do you create also some amount of, I would say, geotagging to make it far more interesting? And then if you're able to do that, and then finally I think the government also has to figure out a way how to make the product far more interesting. So of course there are challenges in terms of trying to export a millet out of India, but you look at, you know, what quinoa has actually been done. Okay. So you now made it as a superfood. The question is how do you make your jawar, bajra, ragi into something more interesting for an international consumer? And the only way that you can probably make it is that by making sure that you probably have a millet snack, and you probably taste some of them today, or in the form of millet noodle, which is going to replace some part of flour. Okay. So if you're able to make, I would say, value addition and using industrial components, I think you can probably definitely capture a market. Look at Switzerland, okay? Has no cocoa.
I'll have to cut you short because I still have 2 more people. To you, given that if you are transplanted from Holland to India, and then you have to work with small farmers, how do you empower them? Sorry. If you are transplanted from Holland to India, and you are given the task to empower the small farmers here, what will you do based on your experiences? 1 minute.
We have 55 seconds left.
Yeah, but
that's a challenge. I can only, what's interesting about the AgTech is what recently has happened in the last 5 years in the US. They raised $3 billion for AgTech on vertical farms, and that resulted in just 200 million in revenue, and they're all out of business. All these vertical farms are out of business. So money doesn't solve anything. Trying to be innovative behind your desk and Excel sheet doesn't do the trick. It's working with the farmers, and I heard that earlier, and I think it's that level of pragmatism that India still has, which is that crucial in getting the innovative solutions that we need for farming for the future.
Thank you. And coming to you, in terms of platform, what is that? You know, you have built an electronic platform and you have 25 seconds or maybe 10 seconds.
We'll try to be very quick here. Yeah. So I think, like Sir mentioned about the DPI, right, Digital Public Infrastructure, I think for everyone to understand and appreciate the power of it, as you all understand what India Stack is and what India Stack did to UPI and what that did to all our lives, that's what is happening with the Agri Stack, right? For the past about 3 years, we, along with large companies like ITC and along with other tech companies, have been trying to build our own stacks where we try to work with each other. We try to finance inputs which someone is selling, then someone comes and buys those goods from those farmers, and all of this gets platformized. But what we are super excited about, it being institutionalized as digital public infrastructure, where on an agri stack, players like us can just integrate and provide our services to a very, very large cohort or base of farmers. And the farmers are also able to access all financial services and agri services in one place with regards to the agri stack.
Thank you, Arjun. It has been a wonderful panel. Thank you very much, all of you. What I take from here, from all of them, is we need to improve productivity to enhance incomes of our farmers and ensure that food safety is at heart. Thank you very much, all the panelists.
Thank you so much, Mr. Raste, for curating such an excellent discussion. Let's give them a mighty round of applause as we celebrate their leadership on stage. And may we request, of course, all our panelists to join us for a group photograph. We have in frame Mr. Arjun, Mr. Dirk, Mr. Giri, Mr. S. Sivakumar, and Mr. Sameer. May we request Mr. Raste to now further felicitate all our eminent speakers, starting with Mr. Arjun and Mr. Raste in one frame. Let's give them a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Dirk, thank you so much for joining us today and contributing to the forum. Mr. Giri, thank you for your valuable contribution. Mr. S. Sivakumar, thank you for joining us today. And Mr. Sameer. And if I could now have the opportunity of inviting Ms. Raja Lakshmi Rao, Vice President, IMC Ladies Wing, to please help us in felicitating our session chair, Mr. Arun. Let's give them a big, big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And with that, we're inviting Ms. Raja Lakshmi to join us on stage. Thank you, Mr. Raste, for joining us and helping us with curating a great discussion. And may we request our entire panel, along with Ms. Raja Lakshmi, to please pose in once again for a group photograph. Remember, hashtag IMC Bharat calling has been trending on Twitter, and continue with posting, letting your thoughts out on social media.